Here's a problem from your Chapter R homework. It's number 11 in this assignment this semester. Is it number 11? Yes, number 11, sorry. We're asked to factor this expression 3x to the negative 1/2 plus 9/2 times x to the 1/2. If I focus first on factoring, then what I need to remember is first that we should always factor out the lower exponent. And so the lower exponent in this case, I've got this common factor of x. Lower exponent is the negative 1/2 power. So that's what I should factor out here, x to the negative 1/2. Now you may or may not be looking at 3 as another common factor that should perhaps be pulled out. I'm going to focus first on dealing with this common factor of x, and then we'll look at any other common factors once we've taken care of this issue. So I'm factoring out 3x to the negative 1/2. I need to figure out what's left over. Since this entire term was factored out, all that's left from the first part of this sum is just the 3. The x to the negative 1/2 is already here. Notice if I think through, if I'm distributing, I'd have 3x to the negative 1/2, the way this is written right now. So I can move on to the second part of the sum. So 9/2, like I said, we haven't done anything with the constant coefficients. Now we've factored out x to the negative 1/2. What I had originally here is x to the positive 1/2. So the first thought is, since this exponent does not exactly match what was factored out, I know that I've got some power of x left over here. In determining this power of x that belongs here, so the question is, what exponent do I put here? The way to figure that out is to take the exponent that you had to begin with, so in this case 1/2, and subtract the power that was factored out, in this case negative 1/2. So you take your initial exponent minus whatever power was factored out. Well, 1/2 minus the negative, that turns into 1/2 plus 1/2, which is 1. So the power of x that goes right here is x to the first. I can close this up. Now the problem also said we should express our answer so that only positive exponents occur. Let me put a couple of equal signs here. So there's a property of exponents that says whenever we got a negative exponent, so anything in the form x to the negative n, that can be written as 1 over x to the n. So this x to the negative 1/2 here can be rewritten as 1 over x to the 1/2. Now let's see, what we have inside here is 3 plus 9/2 times x to the first, so I'm going to put that x in the numerator since it's a positive first power of x. Okay, so now I want to try to combine these terms. I want to try to write this as a single fraction so I can get this thing in factored form. So right now, that 3 there, we can think of that as 3 over 1. If I want to combine what's in the parentheses here, I need a common denominator to be able to combine those fractions. So I need to multiply top and bottom times 2. So now we have 1 over x to the 1/2 times 3 times 2, so 6, plus 9x. Sorry, that's a plus there. All over 2. We've got that common denominator of 2, so we can take this and write it as a single fraction with denominator 2. Now I can multiply straight across there. So 1 times 6 plus 9x over x to the 1/2 times 2. So that's 2x to the 1/2. There is a common factor in that numerator. There's a common factor of 3, so we should factor that out. Factor the 3 out of the numerator, and you're left with 2 plus 3x all over 2x to the 1/2. And this satisfies the requirements that are described here in my math lab. So simplify your answer. Sure, that's simplified. Only positive exponents. Check. We do have this with only positive exponents. We factored as much as we can. Do not rationalize the denominator. So the one thing that you may or may not need to do when you enter this into my math lab, that x to the 1/2 can be rewritten as the square root of x. And so I'm sorry I'm using the bottom corner here. But you could enter this as 3 times 2 plus 3x all over 2 square root of x, if you want to. Going by what my math lab's asking for, it should accept it in either form. But it is good to be aware that that x to the 1/2 is equivalent to writing square root of x.